With the raven now locked in place in front of her, Shiro didn't hesitate as a spear of nanobots appeared beneath him. Flexing her fingers, the spear drilled up as it tore into his body, splitting him in half. He didn't even get the chance to scream before his body was shredded to pieces, but Shiro knew that he wouldn't go down this easily. Taking a few steps back, Shiro slammed her hand down and summoned ice around her to block the attacks of Antania and her summons. Watching the two halves break apart into ravens which soon condensed together again, she clicked her tongue. "The divine needles that I used to pin you down aren't enough, huh?" Shiro said as she knew that gods had their ways of escaping, hence why she used the divine runic needle skill that she had and combined a few runes together to get one that locked his body away. While she could have used error, she wasn't sure about his escape tools, so she wanted to save it for now. "Well, I knew that 4 people were coming for my head today, so of course I have to prepare. I've been keeping an eye on your progress, and you surprise me. You're a demigod that can access tier 8 magic circles if you wish with the power of the runes. I can't let my guard down." The raven smiled as he waved his finger, bringing Antania back to his side. "You can call your 2 friends out too. I can sense them." He chuckled as Shiro narrowed her eyes. Waving her finger, both Nantion and Kiona dropped down from the ceiling and landed next to her. "I must say though, seeing everything here, you remind me of a few people," Shiro said as she glanced at the experiments that were hung on hooks. Remembering her days in the lab as a test subject, she was itching to end him here and now. While she didn't hear much, she heard enough to understand that Niphim and Arnia were sisters who he experimented on. "You again," Niphim muttered as she was still kneeling on the floor. There were times where her consciousness would fade in and out due to the fact that she is a fallen, but she remembers fighting Shiro for a brief moment before coming here. "Yup, I'm not sure how much this will do for you, but it should help you out a little," Shiro said as she conjured up 2 needles. Throwing it towards her, they both stabbed into her body. Widening her eyes, Niphim realized that her mind cleared up and mana was flowing into her body. Standing up, she could sense her injuries disappearing. After being fallen for so many years, it was hard for her to think with such clarity, but it was like a blocked pipe had just been unblocked. Feeling better? Divine energy works wonders, but this only lasts for a little while. Shiro smiled as Niphim nodded. "I suppose you're here to help out with killing him then?" Niphim asked as she glared at the raven who had a smile on his face. He was waiting patiently while the two were talking to one another. "You can say that. I didn't have much of a vendetta against him, but now that I've seen everything, let's just say he's pretty high on my kill list. Only second to someone else." Shiro chuckled as she suddenly disappeared from her spot. Appearing beside Antania, she grabbed her by the head and slammed her into the ground. Planting her foot on her neck, Shiro tugged on the head as hard as she could. *KSHHHH. Seeing Shiro rip Antania's head off of her shoulders, Niphim blinked her eyes in surprise while Kiona was reminded of the fatalities in a certain game she played in Asharia. As for Nantion, he wasn't bothered at all. Snapping her fingers, needles appeared all around the building as tier 7 magic circles decorated the walls. Taking a few steps back, the raven was composed as black tendrils suddenly shot out of Antania's body in an attempt to grab Shiro. Quickly backing off, Shiro watched as the head was reconnected. "While I do know that Antania can't kill you, I want to see how my manufactured empress holds up against a demigod. Let this be a live test." The raven smiled before dispersing into a flock of ravens. "Don't worry, he hasn't left. If he did, my needles would notify me. They've secured this area across multiple dimensions." Shiro reassured Niphim as this was something she worked on together with Aram and Estrella. After all, now that they've become stronger, their enemies would have more ways of escaping, especially if they're a god like being like the raven. "All right, I know we're both empresses, but if you can help me with him, that would be appreciated. I don't intend on winning this race to begin with. I just want to kill this bastard," Niphim said seriously as she clasped her hands together. Suddenly, darkness covered the entire floor as claws appeared beneath Antania's summons, shredding them to pieces. "Of course, like I said, I want to kill this person as well." Shiro smiled. "Nantion, cover my back as usual," she called out as Nantion nodded. After all, his skill lets him block most attacks that are aimed at her, even if that thing was a spear that couldn't miss. Crouching down, Shiro dashed forward and summoned Sylvanes. Normally, she wouldn't want to end things so quickly, but against a twisted monster like this, she would do her the favor of killing her quickly. Appearing in front of Antania, Shiro activated her skill Kaitoma. With Antania not being able to move for a moment, Shiro cleaved down with her blade. Poochie. Using their bodies to protect Antania, the summoned beings formed a shield in front of her, giving her enough time to back off. From the bodies of the summons, crystals erupted, but waves of light shattered them before they could even touch Shiro. Without wasting a single moment, Shiro appeared in front of Antania again. Slamming her palm into her stomach, runic symbols spread across her body like an infection. Searing into her skin, the runes emitted a soft golden glow. "This will be quick, I promise," Shiro whispered. Her blade erupted with a red glow as she cleaved Antania in half, revealing the crystal in the middle of her body. In a split second, hundreds of needles stabbed into the crystal and shattered it to pieces before Antania could even do anything. Watching everything that happened, the Raven was shocked. This speed, this power, a blade that ignored all defense. Unless one is faster than Shiro, it would be hard to defeat her considering the fact that her blade ignores all defenses. "Last resort it is then," he muttered. Suddenly, black goo erupted from the shattered crystals and threaded itself back together. Tentacles lashed out, stitching Antania's body together once more as Shiro furrowed her brows. Releasing a blast of mana between the two of them, she forced Antania to back off as she summoned a bow that was blessed by Asteria and Artemis. Artemis' blessings makes it so that her attack couldn't be dodged, while Asteria's blessing increased her attack. Pulling back on the bowstring, Sylvanes was placed on the bow. A portal opened up behind her as it revealed the scenery of space. Without the sun to block the stars, her bow started to glow with a silver light. Golden runes appeared on her blade as Shiro narrowed her eyes. If Artemis' blessings makes it so that she can't miss, what if she locks onto the core of a being? When the crystal repaired itself, she had already scanned Antania to see where her core was. In a separate dimension, there was a single heart that acted as her core. Once that was destroyed, she wouldn't be able to regenerate, and Sylvanes made it so that almost no defenses could stop it. With the third effect of Sylvanes, she can shift it through space. She just needed to adjust where it reappeared. Two crests appeared on her bow as Shiro fired the sword at Antania. As the sword cut through the space between them, the cut seemed to reveal the void as it disappeared before hitting Antania. Confused as to why the blade disappeared, Niphim watched as Antania suddenly lost her entire upper body along with the crystal. Dismissing the bow, Shiro turned her body and summoned the sword back into her hand and aimed it into the darkness. "You're next, Raven." Shiro glared as killing intent surged out like a tidal wave. Surprised that she was able to pinpoint him, the Raven stayed silent. "Niphim, I have two options for you. Do you want him to die 100%, or do you want to try and kill him? As a person who wants revenge myself, I know that nothing is sweeter than pulling out his heart and crushing it yourself," Shiro asked as her aura flared out. "Second option," Niphim replied as Shiro nodded. "Then you have my blessings." Shiro curled her lips into a grin as a crest suddenly appeared on Niphim's body. Suddenly, Niphim received a notification. "You have received the blessings of the nanotech demigoddess." Receiving the blessing, Niphim could feel a warm energy spreading through her body. Unlike the cold feeling she had whenever the Raven did this, Shiro's blessing was like the sun, dispelling her worries. "I won't do much aside from giving you this weapon to help you out. If you need support, just tell me." Shiro smiled and threw a hand cannon towards her. It was the same hand cannon that had an upgraded core embedded with the crystal. Shooting it into the Raven's body would allow her to absorb his life force. Nodding her head, Niphim looked at the gun and guessed that she would need to pull the trigger for it to fire. Conjuring a sword of shadows into her hand, she dashed towards where the Raven would be. "You have quite the trust in her if you believe that Niphim can kill me." The Raven's voice rang out as tendrils of darkness intercepted Niphim's path. "Well, you have to give the girl some trust. Plus, someone on the path of revenge might show you some surprising things." Shiro chuckled as she stared at Raven, who was flickering between dimensions. "Your evaluation of her is too high, perhaps, but that's up to her," Shiro said as she watched Niphim cut down the tentacles with ease. Adjusting her footwork, she avoided the tentacles narrowly while slashing them with her sword. It was as though she was in the middle of a ballroom dancing to a tune while her eyes were focused on her target. Aiming the gun at the tentacle to her side, she pulled the trigger and fired a shot. The recoil and the force behind the shot surprised her, but she managed to adjust herself just in time. Asterisk bang. Piercing into the tentacle, it was crystallized in an instant before shattering apart. "You found the crystals as well," the Raven called out as a flock of birds shot towards Niphim. I discovered it a while ago in the far north. Though considering the fact that you didn't know this, I'd say you haven't visited there recently. Well, with that egg there, I'm not eager to find out who the parents are. The raven chuckled before appearing behind Niphim while she was dealing with the birds. Immediately turning around, Niphim jammed the gun against his body and pulled the trigger. Asterisk bang, forcing him to transform into a flock of ravens once more. Niphim clicked her tongue and pivoted on her foot, conjuring up a wall of shadows around her. She stomped her foot down. Black runes spread out like a web, traveling up the bodies of the tentacles and draining them of their power. Adjusting her senses to focus on mana, Shiro noticed that Niphim was siphoning their mana into herself to empower her own stats. With all the buffs added up on her body now, she was roughly twice as strong as before. "Come out here, you coward!" Niphim shouted out in anger since the raven refused to face her properly. Instead, he sent waves after waves of disposable grunts towards her. "Seeing as how you're so afraid of fighting her, I suppose I should make it a fair fight," Shiro said as she clasped her hands together. Closing her eyes, divine runes appeared around her. Weaving together to form needles, they shot out and disappeared. Arg, crying out in pain, the raven was thrown against the wall. On his body, an ever-changing runic pattern could be seen. "I was holding back a little earlier. Don't think you can escape so easily this time." Shiro smirked as the raven frowned. However, he didn't believe her. If he could get out once, he could do it again. Just as he tried to escape, the runes expanded across his body and emitted a golden glow that caused his skin to burn. Sucking in a sharp breath, he glared at Shiro. Her runes were ever-changing since they would lock onto him the moment he tried to leave. They were adaptive to anything he did. She was correct, he couldn't leave. Narrowing his eyes, he decided to kill the caster. If Shiro died, he'd be able to leave. Flexing his fingers, several spears shot towards her in a separate dimension in an attempt to surprise her. However, before they could hit, Nantion flickered in front of Shiro and grabbed all of the spears before crushing them in his hands. "No harming her in front of me now," Nantion chuckled before throwing one of the spears back. Dismissing it, the raven wondered about what to do when he suddenly felt a surge of killing intent behind him. Turning around, he watched as Niphim's purple eyes glowed in the darkness as the sword cleaved towards his head. Understanding that he couldn't run, he gritted his teeth and reached out towards her throat. Grabbing her, he slammed her against the ground. However, the killing intent didn't disappear. Niphim faded into a puddle of shadows while a sword cut down his back. Grabbing his head, Niphim aimed the gun barrel at the back and pulled the trigger. Before she could fire, however, a tentacle of shadows appeared and grabbed her by the waist. Slamming her against the wall, the tentacle formed a blade and cut towards her. Diving into the shadow realm to avoid being killed, Niphim glared at the raven. "I didn't think I'd be forced to this stage. I'll admit, with what you can do, you certainly pose a certain threat to me as a god. However, if you think a god can be killed like this, you are dead wrong." The raven narrowed his eyes. Clasping his hands together, black lightning flickered around his body as the golden runes shattered to pieces. Divine energy erupted from his body as the shadows in the room started to twist. Feeling danger all around them, Shiro furrowed her brows. As expected, a god can't be killed so easily. "Gaia, anything I should know when killing a god?" Shiro shouted out while dashing towards Niphim's direction. Goddess Gaia states that a god cannot be killed unless you eliminate the core of their being. She doesn't know whether or not this raven is an avatar or not since his aura is rather strange, so you should definitely be careful. Errors should be able to bypass most of his defenses, but getting him to the stage where he can't protect the core is going to be hard. Also, he may pull you into his own realm where his power is at its strongest. See if you can anchor all of yourself to Earth to avoid this. Reading this, Shiro nodded her head. "Thanks for the tip, Gaia." Shiro smiled. Flickering next to Niphim, she slapped a seal on her back as golden runes appeared on her arm. "This will stop him from isolating you in his realm," Shiro said as she healed her with life fire. Snapping her fingers, the same runes appeared on Nantion and Kiona. "Don't think about running," the raven said as darkness wrapped around the entire room, preventing any form of light to enter. "Sorry. If you want to stop me from leaving, then you have to do much better than this." Shiro grinned. Clasping her hands together, all four of them disappeared in a flash. Landing roughly on the ice, Shiro glanced back at the split, which revealed the lab. It was now covered with a bubbling pool of darkness that slowly welled up. A black sludge-covered raven figure could be seen as the beady red eyes glared at them. "If I can't drag you, and then I'll project my influence outwards," he shouted out as darkness spread out as far as the eye could see. Tentacles erupted out from around them as it reached high into the sky. "You know, just because I am a tier 6 being doesn't mean I can't contest against someone like you. I've prepared plenty." Shiro smirked as she slammed her hand down. A giant tier 7 magic circle appeared as pillars of light shot down from space, destroying the tentacles in an instant. Firing all of the satellites she had above this area, she activated their secondary function. This was something that she had prepared previously after receiving her skill, Machine Goddess Decent. Large towers of nanobots suddenly shot down from space. Asterisk bang. Crushing the ice beneath them, they planted themselves around the area. These towers were mana conductors that funneled the ambient mana towards Shiro. The most important part was that each of them had an anchor inside. While it did indeed weaken Shiro for a short period, the long-term effects were much greater. After all, right now, she received a passive increase of 40% to her stats along with 40% system assistance. With how much range her towers now covered, it was not an exaggeration to say that the entire area was now her domain. Feeling the mana funnel towards her, Shiro smiled. "Nip him. This should allow you to get a bonus as well." Designating Nip him as an allied queen, or rather, empress, she also received a 40% boost to her stats. Feeling the energy flowing through her body, Nip him was speechless. How many buffs can she apply? From their short battle earlier, Nip him knew that Shiro's base stats were already crazy. But with this, she was in a realm of her own. Walking towards the raven, Shiro summoned her sword. "Are you ready to die?" She grinned. "I suggest using everything you can, since I'll be doing the same. If we can kill him now, it would be good. I have a tracker on him, but I don't know how long it'll last," Shiro said as she started to walk towards the raven. "Nantion, come with me, like usual. Kiona, watch out since this is outside of your powers," she ordered as Kiona nodded her head. She disappeared into the ice. Secretly pulling out her phone, she started to play some games. "Full power?" Nantion asked as Shiro nodded her head. "Full power," she confirmed. As the two were walking towards the raven, Nip him joined them. "I should tell you about my time limit then. I should be able to fight at full power for 10 minutes. Anything beyond that, and I would run out of energy." "That's fine. 10 minutes should be enough." Slamming her hand down, divine energy erupted from Shiro's body as tier 7 magic circles wrapped around her body. Similar to what happened the first time she ascended to a demigod state, a pillar of light shot down from the sky, covering her body with a golden radiance. The ice was slowly replaced by nanobots beneath their feet. Dispelling the light, there was now a golden aura around Shiro's body. "Demigod," the raven said coldly as Shiro nodded her head. "There are plenty of stories about demigods killing god-like beings. This will be one of them." Shiro grinned. Snapping her finger, all of the towers that dropped down from the satellites transformed into rail cannons. Widening his eyes, the raven wasn't able to react as they all fired at him. Slamming his hand down, shadows erupted from the ground to form a barrier, but Nip him intercepted. While she was unable to destroy the shield completely, her influence should be just enough to open a few small holes. The guns can do the rest. ARGG. Crying out in pain, the raven was shocked to discover that these shots also attacked his soul. Each attack he took would chip away at his soul. Gritting his teeth, he narrowed his eyes and pushed his hand out. URH. Crying out in anger, darkness descended on the area, covering the land as far as the eyes could see, but Shiro only laughed. Thanks to Nyx's blessings, this was beneficial to her. With her skill being at Divinity Rank 1, her area of influence fought back against the darkness. Since the raven is a god, his divinity is probably rank 2 or higher. "I won't be able to do much, so just keeping my domain would be good for me," Shiro thought to herself. "Do you want me and Azul to come out as well? If we have 3 demigod-ranked people fighting against him, it should make things easier." Nimue asked as Shiro shook her head. "It's fine. I'll call for your help if I need it. We can deal with things for now," Shiro replied as Nimue nodded her head. Jumping into the air, Niphim glared at the giant body of the raven and slammed her hand down. Breaking through the clouds, tentacles of corruption shot towards him as black liquid trailed behind them. Understanding that the corruption and darkness couldn't harm him, the raven was about to dispel it when it shattered apart to reveal blades created from nanobots. Since her divinity allowed her to replace anything within her area of influence with nanobots, The Raven will need to be careful of all the attacks. Asterisk bang. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovelworld.com. Crashing against the Raven's body, the blades disassembled themselves into hundreds of nanotech serpents. Feeling the serpents travel across his body, the Raven gritted his teeth in anger. "Get the hell off me," he shouted out as mana erupted from his body. Teleporting in front of him, Shiro grinned. "Perfect," creating a shield of nanobots. They started to absorb the mana until there was nothing left. Teleporting away, Shiro landed on one of the towers and stomped down. Creating a seat for herself, the tower split in half and a giant barrel appeared, aiming towards the Raven. With his giant body, it was hard to move out of the way as Shiro pulled the trigger. Tens of Tier 7 magic circles stacked on top of one another with the crystal inside the gun trying to amplify as much as possible. Asterisk bang. Firing the shot, the force broke the tower apart as Nantion blocked the explosion with a barrier. Narrowing his eyes at the shot, he clasped his hands together and created a Tier 6 magic circle in front of it. Splitting the shot into multiple copies, they slammed in the Raven's body. Asterisk boom. Watching the giant explosion, Niphim closed her eyes and slammed her hand into the ground. The shadows created by this explosion shot forward and wrapped around the Raven's body, securing him in place. Feeling anger boil up in his heart, the Raven wanted to thrash around and destroy everything, but no matter what he did, they made sure he couldn't move. If he ignored Niphim, Shiro would replace her attacks with nanobots. If he tried to get rid of things with anything mana-based, Shiro would absorb it with her nanobots and fire it back at him. He wanted to pull them into his domain, but Shiro was able to escape using Tier 8 runes. No matter what he did, they countered. A sense of helplessness washed over him as he wanted to attack, but had no chance to. Gritting his teeth, he decided to ignore the damage he sustained. He will break through this forcefully. Yura, releasing his aura, his figure charged forth like a natural disaster. All of the nanobots that Shiro conjured up were shattered apart as black tendrils erupted from his body. Everything the tentacles touched would disappear, and Shiro noticed that they were sent elsewhere. If we come into contact, there is a high chance of getting dragged into his realm. That's not good, Shiro thought to herself as Nantion flashed in front of her and clasped his hands together. Opening them, a condensed orb of light could be seen as he threw it towards the Raven. Asterisk boom. Expanding into miniature sun, the tendrils were melted in an instant. However, rather than back off, the Raven's body opened up and swallowed the sun. Just as Shiro was about to teleport them away for safety, she noticed that the Raven's shadow plane had wrapped around this area like a net. The moment they teleport away, it'll catch them and drag them away. If you don't care about damage, then surely you don't mind this. Shiro narrowed her eyes. Summoning Sylvanes, Shiro stabbed it down as a giant Tier 8 magic circle appeared. Golden runes appeared on the sword and started to expand out into a formation. In space, all of the satellites started to charge up their strongest attack as portals opened near the barrel. Aiming her sword at the Raven, thousands upon thousands of portals opened around him as they were closely packed together. Turning her sword, all of the satellites fired and closed the portal before the explosion could damage everything. Asterisk boom. Before the impact of the explosion could slam against her, Nantion moved her behind him and covered them with a barrier. Getting carried away by the blast, Shiro could sense that both Kiona and Niphim were safe and glanced towards the Raven, who had his enlarged body destroyed. Standing in the center was a wounded man with blood flowing out of his body. Before he could say anything, Niphim jumped out of his shadow with a nanotech blade and pierced his chest. Pulling back her arm, she stabbed it into one of his many wounds and broken past the ribs to find the heart. "Just destroying my heart won't kill me," the Raven spat out. "I know. I'm afraid I can't kill you, but you know who can? She can." Niphim smiled as her spot was traded with Shiro. "Yo, how does a virus in your code sound?" Shiro asked as her right arm that was now grabbing his heart was completely black. Red circuit patterns spread through his body as the Raven started convulsing. He could feel the searing pain of a foreign entity trying to invade his code. But no matter how he tried to pull Shiro off, he wasn't able to muster enough strength. *T, cursing in his mind. He felt this entity connect to his core. Feeling the connection, Shiro grinned and pulled her hand back. *Poochie. Ignoring the blood that was spraying over her body, Shiro now had an orb of light floating on her hand while being caged by red circuits. This isn't over. The raven muttered weakly as Shiro curled her lips up into a grin. Are you sure? The red circuits that lashed onto his core had golden runes that Shiro had etched. Using the runes and nanobots that had a clear affinity with error, she activated the program she had set up which would assist with a certain task. Leaning to his ear, she opened her mouth. I'm sure your core will make a fantastic anchor for me. Hearing this, the raven widened his eyes in horror before black mist covered Shiro's body, and she dragged his weakened soul out into the lantern. You have slain a god. You have obtained a skill. You have obtained a title. He didn't know when he came to be, but he was always drifting around in the void. There was nothing except for him, and anything that appeared was always smaller than him. His hunger was not intense, but he wanted to feast. However, the things he ate were strange. They were a mixture of numbers and letters that floated around. Of course, he didn't know that at the time. He thought that everything was like this. He continued to roam this void until one day, he felt a tug, a strange pull that summoned him to the world. For the first time, he saw something else other than numbers and letters. A monster that could petrify. Diving into her body, he discovered a banquet of numbers and letters for him to consume. But most of all, a single orb in her body. The letters and numbers could combine into words within this orb. Seeing this, he opened his mouth and consumed it. After consuming it, his mind became clear. He understood more of the world from the monster's perspective. Just as he was enjoying this feeling, he was dragged away forcefully. After being returned to the void once more, he felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness. In this place of numbers and letters, he was alone. But his wait was short. Soon, the same sensation appeared, but the tug was stronger. Seeing the familiar face of the woman, he knew that she was the one who had been bringing him out of the void. A sense of gratitude appeared in his mind as he dived into the body of his next victim. This time, the banquet was exquisite. Everything was the best of the best, especially that core. Feeling the energy it radiated, he knew that he would be satisfied if he ate it. Just as he took a bite, a wave of energy pushed him out of this place. He could only lament that he didn't take a bigger bite. After consuming this piece of his code, the being felt his mind clear up once more. The woman that has been pulling him out and providing him food was akin to a mother bird, and he was being fed until he'd grown up and could hunt for himself. Then that would classify her as his mother. Redistributing some of the power back to her as thanks for the meal, he was expecting to go back to the void. However, that was not the case. Looking around him, he realized that he was in a different realm, one that was filled to the brim with mana, and there were a few people here. Realizing that he doesn't have to go back, he claimed a spot and started to make himself at home, ready for the next time he is called to assist her. Every time he was brought out, he was able to eat to his heart's content. All of this knowledge, this experience, paired with the knowledge gained from consuming a piece of the god, he knew that this world was crumbling. He wanted his mother to survive, so he started to gather as much power as he could, sacrificing parts of the god code that he consumed into upgrading her sword. His efforts were rewarded with gratitude that brought him warmth. The next time he helped her, he gave her a pair of eyes that can see into the code like he does. But the effect was limited. Thanks to a god being nearby, he was able to make it so that these eyes see into the flow of time. It was what she needed. For the first time, his voice was heard, but he was soon struck with an overwhelming sense of fatigue. Going to sleep for a while, he was forced out of his slumber when she almost became a fallen. The being in front of her was strong, very strong, stronger than the god that she faced since he was just an avatar. But thankfully, another god saved her and stopped her from falling completely. With him being forced to fight during his weakened state, he was forced into slumber completely, but the realm was repairing him, albeit slowly. It was only recently that he was able to keep his consciousness for a little longer. To his surprise, after he was woken up again, he was presented with another core of a god. This time, there was no energy to stop him, no energy to push him out. The entire core was his to consume. Wrapping his body around the code, he started to consume, while the rest of the energy was being converted into an anchor. Looking at this, he decided to help out the process since he was given such a good meal. ####. You have slain a god. You have obtained a skill. You have obtained a title. World announcement. A god has been slain by an empress for the first time. Looking at the body of the raven that was now crumbling away, Shiro decided to ignore the notifications for the time being. The main problem was dealing with Niphim since things could be bad. Now that she has achieved her goal, she might become fallen completely. Niphim, Shiro called out as Niphim looked over. I feel oddly peaceful, but I know what being fallen means. Niphim sighed. So do I, but I think there is something I can do for you. While I might not be able to cancel the process, I might be able to pause it for a while, Shiro said as Niphim paused. If you can't, then it's fine. I've resolved myself to what would happen anyways. I've had quite a few years to think about it, though I hope you can do me a favor. Arnia, the Chimera Empress, if you ever run into her, can you spare her and maybe help her? She's not a bad person. Her mind is just in turmoil right now. Niphim asked as there was still a chance for Arnia to keep living in this world. She was a better product of Raven's experiment, so Arnia's life expectancy was much higher than hers. I can certainly try, but I'll let you deal with that when you can. While I do not know how to solve the problem of you being fallen, I will attempt to freeze your time and stop things from progressing, Shiro said as Niphim nodded. Do what you want. I don't mind the outcome now that my revenge is fulfilled, Niphim said, but Shiro shook her head. Rather inconsiderate of the big sis to leave behind the little sis. How do you think she'll feel once her memories come back? Shiro asked as Niphim stayed silent. Then I hope this is a success, Niphim muttered, nodding her head. Shiro activated the runes in her eyes. Strands appeared in front of her as she reached out and activated several runes. Yo Kronos, want to give me a quick lesson? I have an idea, but getting some assistance would be helpful, Shiro called out as a system interface appeared in front of her. God Kronos says that if you want to halt a person's time, you would need to anchor them down, but make sure the surrounding time is still flowing. It would be akin to removing her spot from the flow of time and placing it on a cart that continues to travel along the line. While her time is frozen, the flow is not, and it continues to flow. But you cannot halt her time completely. If you do, she'll die. Reading this, Shiro nodded since it was what she had expected. One by one, Tyr's 7 magic circles appeared around Niphim as she was closely encased in an ice coffin. Feeling her divine energy drain from her body, Shiro furrowed her brows since there was only a little bit left until she was back into her base form. She cannot halt her time, or else she'll die. Therefore, the best option would be a loop similar to the dungeon. Force an event to replay over and over slowly. The last 5 seconds of her peacefulness. Shiro just needed to make that repeat over and over again. Reaching out with her spare hand, she started to adjust the strands connected to Niphim before forcing them into a loop. Breaking the loop isn't too hard since she had already experimented with an apple. The energy consumption was just a little ridiculous. Clasping her hand together, a golden seal appeared on the surface of the coffin and runic patterns spread along the surface. Skill created. Would you like to name the skill? Yes, call it Avrin, Shiro said as Avrin had a special meaning in Aria's language. It meant an everlasting moment, and it was a good description of this skill. Repeating the same moment slowly as though time has halted. With how slow time was moving inside, Niphim probably won't even finish one cycle of that 5 seconds before she pulls her out and cures her fallen status. Or at least that's what Shiro hoped. Skill, Avrin. A skill that freezes the target in time while the world moves around them. Cost, 60% of divine energy plus activation of machine goddess descent. Duration, until caster cancels the skill or someone breaks the seal. Backlash, none. Cooldown, none. Looking at Niphim, who was now frozen in ice and time, Shiro waved her hand and teleported her away to Asharia. After doing this, she glanced back at the destruction and shook her head. To fight a god, the damage to the surroundings is quite severe. Corruption, craters and trenches caused by their attacks could be seen as Shiro flexed her fingers, retrieving all of the towers before fixing the ice so that it seems like nothing had ever happened here. As for the lab, she naturally destroyed it. There was no use in keeping something like that around. Dismissing her demigod skill, Shiro felt the divine energy leave her body, causing her to feel quite drained. Compared to the skill that Chaos granted, this was much better since there was no backlash. But in terms of power, the skill that Chaos gave was much better since it allowed her to skip to god form and even talk to the system. Shaking her head, she glanced at the rest of her rewards. Since she used extraction to kill the raven, one of his skills along with his memories will be transplanted to her, much like what happened with Ikari. She had expected the memories to appear immediately, but that hasn't happened just yet, so she was curious. You have gained the title, God Slayer 1/5. When fighting against a god, you siphon 10% of their stats and each of your attacks are imbued with a special element that makes it easier for you to resist divinity and cut it apart. Current bonus, 10% divinity rejection. After killing 5 gods, this title will undergo an upgrade. Reading the description of her title, Shiro blinked her eyes. The fact that it allowed her to siphon 10% of their stats was already powerful, never mind the fact that she could now suppress 10% of their divinity. This meant that if she was to fight the Raven again, it'll be harder for him to affect her with his darkness. But most of all, this was a growth-type title similar to her monster title, which she hasn't been leveling up. After all, kills in dungeons don't count, and neither does killing monsters. With how things are right now, finding 80,000 people to kill so that it levels up wasn't going to be easy. As for the skill that she gained, extracted skill, chimera production. After gaining enough authority from queens and empresses, you are able to fuse them together to form a core that allows you to create a golem with the powers of an empress. With enough research, the golem might even become as strong as a demigod. Cost: not applicable. Duration: not applicable. Backlash: none. Cooldown: none. This skill was essentially had zero cost aside from the fact that she needed collect enough authority. However, she wasn't exactly fond of this skill considering the fact that it required her to do research. While the golem could become as strong as a demigod or maybe even higher, she is not going to be going around kidnapping queens to do the experimenting. Torture? Yes, she'll gladly do that, but experimenting while keeping them alive is not something she is going to do. She won't stoop as low as the Raven or the scientists that made her. For now, this skill was essentially useless to her. Shame, I was hoping for something better, but I suppose this will do. Shiro thought to herself before looking at the second notification that followed this skill. You can choose to experience a part of his life. As you have killed and extracted him completely, you can experience his entire life if you wish. This can be done whenever you want. Reading this, Shiro sighed in relief. There was a problem when it came to skills like this. It was similar to the actor skill she recycled enough. If you experience someone else's life long enough, it could have a negative impact on your mind. With how long the Raven's been around, there will definitely be some problems that may happen, so she won't risk it for now. She might look at it in the future only for a short period so that she understands gods and demigods some more. Dismissing the notification, she was greeted by another. The system and administrators have chosen a reward for you. As you are the first ever Tier 6 being to kill a god in history, you are allowed to pick from the catalog of Tier 7 sub-divinities. Goddess Gaia shouts out in shock. She states that you should definitely grab this chance to get something as close to a core divinity as possible. Since the system allows you to browse the catalog, any Tier 7 sub-divinity that has appeared in history will appear in the catalog. Every sub-divinity that existed will be there. Blinking her eyes, Shiro didn't need Gaia to tell her since she understood how powerful this was. With just the nanotech divinity, she was almost unbeatable. And this wasn't taking into account of the bonuses that Nimue and the others have given her, upgrading her fire, water, and life elements to Tier 7. But they were in a similar stage as them. Almost sub-divinities, but not quite. They made her immune to fire and the respective elements, but didn't provide the same bonuses as her own divinity. Now that the system gave her a chance to obtain a second sub-divinity, she had to firmly grasp this chance. Get the most out of it as possible. However, there was a better way to deal with all of this than to browse the catalog one by one. Ask the system itself. You might want to avoid that for now. I know how fast you can read through things, so it's no harm to browse the catalog. Plus, it's every sub-divinity. That means information. You can potentially understand their weaknesses as well as strengths. If you fight a demigod or god with a sub-divinity, you can pull up their information immediately. Nimue called out in Shiro's mind as she nodded her head. That's true. Information like this is precious, so I should go through all of it before choosing one. There are still things I want to ask the system, but it can wait. Once I have a big list, I'll ask it all. Shiro nodded before setting the reward aside for now. Tracing her finger into a circle, a portal appeared, and an orb with red circuits appeared. Crystallized Heart of God, the core of a god that has been slain. It is currently being transformed by an entity known as Error and an empress/demigod known as Shiro. Once the transformation is complete, it'll become a divine anchor. Reading the description, Shiro nodded her head in satisfaction. Seeing the pulsing red circuits on the surface, Shiro smiled. Good work today, Error, she praised. One of the strands separated itself from the surface and hopped onto Shiro's hand before bouncing around. Smiling softly, Shiro played around with it before storing it in a separate space that Estrella had set up. With most of the things done here, Shiro looked over at Nantion, who was waiting patiently by a portal, and Kiona, who was on her phone. Let's go back. Also, Kiona, I'm sure you don't mind me wanting to help out nip him, right? Shiro smiled. You do whatever you want. I just don't want her to kill everything if she falls. Kiona nodded. Great. Then let's talk about the details of our alliance. ####. Isn't that reward a little excessive? This kind of reward is too much. Even if she is the first ever to kill a god at this level, it's still a bit ridiculous to let her see the whole catalog. It's not excessive. She's worked hard for everything that she has earned. Think about it this way. If you had just killed a god at her level, would you be happy with a pat on the shoulder? We can't give her a weapon. She already owns a rainbow grade sword that is being upgraded slowly. We can't give her armor since it's the same situation. She is learning more and more about demigods and gods, so naturally we need to give something appropriate. And the system agrees as well. Otherwise, why do you think it would accept the suggestion of letting her view the catalog? A man replied as he had a neutral expression. Hearing this, the one who asked the question frowned and started to walk away. Looking at the back of Administrator 4, Administrator 8 sighed as his expression changed. You were the one who always wanted the best for her. I'm only doing what you wanted, he thought to himself. Shaking his head, he brought up a screen and watched the scene of Shiro going back to her city to talk about the alliance. Thinking about, Administrator 8 had an idea. Since Niphim wants to help her sister, if Arnia remembers everything and Shiro is able to somehow help Niphim, that's 2 empresses on her side. System, I want to propose a second reward for her, but one that won't affect her directly. The discussion of the alliance was pretty simple. In exchange for helping Kiona with what she needs, Shiro will get her assistance in becoming the winner of the new age. It was similar to Misu's, but with some minor changes. There were some new conditions such as Shiro providing her with the best server and new computers, but that wasn't important. Shiro did ask Kiona about her wish that she had for the new age, but she said if Shiro can accomplish it, then it doesn't matter. Since she just wanted humanoid monsters to have more safety in this world rather than being hunted down. Naturally, Shiro was fine with that. As long as they didn't attack, she was sure that the citizens in Asharia would be understanding. After all, if they could make peace with demons, they can do the same with humanoid monsters. Once the contract was made, Kiona went back to her city while Shiro spent the time relaxing while checking out her other rewards. By that, she meant her level. After killing the raven, the EXP she received from killing a god was much more than she expected. It directly propelled her from level 870 to 950. A whole 80 levels at this stage was insane with how much EXP was required. Plus, before sealing Niphim, Shiro could see that she had reached level 1000 while Nantion gained 10 levels himself. He didn't do much aside from protecting Shiro when she needed it, so his EXP gain was naturally smaller. Now that she has reached level 950, she gained an additional passive skill, Nanotech Demigoddess Physique. Health will not go down as long as you have mana. If you run out of mana, nanobots will be destroyed instead. Your health will only go down once all nanobots and mana are gone. Plus 60% damage nullification. Plus 50% elemental resistance. Plus 20% divine energy generation. Plus 20% true damage nullification. Reading this passive skill, Shiro's lips curled up into a smile since this was perfect for her. When she activates her machine goddess Decent, she essentially creates an immortality field for herself when combined with the new passive. If I start a fight and have the satellites drop the towers down, I suppose even if I stand still, it'll be hard for them to kill me. The towers collect ambient mana to produce more nanobots so that it doesn't drain my own mana after all. Shiro thought with a small smile. Looking at her stat table, Shiro figured that it was about time to start fusing skills together. Thinking about this, Shiro wondered what she could do. Previously, she had been using the Blessing of Chaos to increase her privilege to talk to the system and ask it for tasks. If she asks it now, it shouldn't be too much of a problem, especially since it was just fusing skills together. System, are you able to help me condense skills down? Shiro called out. Seeing no response, Shiro clicked her tongue and glanced towards her Chimera Art skill. Since it was something that helped her fuse elements together for a short period of time, Shiro wondered if she could combine it with Error to help her. Activating Error, Shiro watched as her arm turned black and red circuits appeared. Error, can you help me out with something? Shiro asked as Error bounced up and down, mimicking the actions of a nod. Cute. Are you able to help me fuse a few skills together with Chimera Arts? It's the skill that fuses elements together. I was wondering if we could repurpose it to work with skills instead. Hearing this, Error paused for a moment before diving back into her arm, forcefully canceling the spell for a moment. It seemed as though he just disappeared, which confused Shiro. Was it outside of his capabilities? Shiro thought to herself. However, just as she thought of this, a glitch started to appear in front of her. As though tearing through reality, a flickering box with a glitching border appeared in front of her, asking her a single question. Would you like to sacrifice Chimera Arts to create Skill Alchemist? Seeing the border that kept flickering as though it'll disappear at any moment, Shiro quickly accepted before it was too late. Feeling a slight prick inside, she watched as Chimera Arts started to glitch out on her stat board before being replaced with Skill Alchemist. Skill Alchemist, a unique skill produced with the sacrifice of Chimera Arts and the help of error. This skill can fuse skills together to produce something stronger, but it can only be the skills that you have earned from your class. In the case of Entity, Shiro, it will not work with recycled skills. Cost: 2 or more skills to activate. Duration: skills created by this are permanent and cannot be reversed. Cooldown: none. Backlash: none. Warning: if the nature of the skill conflicts too much, it may cause a failure which forces this skill to be on cooldown for 2 months. The skills used will be refunded, but their effectiveness will be decreased slightly. Reading this, Shiro blinked her eyes in surprise since she didn't expect Error to directly make a skill for her by sacrificing Chimera Arts. Seeing Error stand on her arm and puffing out his circuit chest in a proud manner, Shiro smiled and patted his would-be head. Good job. Shiro praised Error as he jumped around before going back into her arm. Activating Skill Alchemist, Shiro could see a new menu appear with empty slots. She assumed this to be the spot where she picked the skills. Now it was just a case of going through her skills. Let's see, Shiro muttered while looking at her skills. She decided to experiment with the skills that don't have much priority right now. Pressing Tier 6 Elemental Magic, Legendary Elemental Mastery, Spirit Assistance EX, Elemental Breath and Force of Elements. Shiro tapped on Fuse and waited for the result. Seeing the loading bar on the bottom, Shiro stayed silent. She could see the skills slowly fade away on her stat board while the loading bar moved. Soon, all 5 skills disappeared. Element Control EX. You are able to control all of the basic elements to maximum efficiency and even call on spirits to help. During an attack, you can choose to enhance that attack with elements. The more elements you infuse, the stronger that attack becomes. Each element that you infuse into an attack takes 5% of your mana. Cooldown: not applicable. Backlash: none. Reading this skill, Shiro raised her eyebrows in surprise since most of the skill has become passive effects which boost her control without any cost. The only cost now was the effect that came with Force of Nature, and even then, the cost was decreased to 5% per element. What else can I combine? Shiro muttered. Demigod's Raiment is an enhance ability that gives me a second set of armor similar to True Spirit Nature, so these two might be pretty good together. Though True Spirit Nature is something that brings out my nature as a spirit, and Demigod Raiment is just elemental armor that enhances attack. To be fair, Demigod Raiment would have probably been better with Element Control EX, Shiro thought to herself. The main reason she wanted to fuse True Spirit Nature with Demigod Raiment was so that she could eliminate the 1-minute time restriction of her True Spirit Nature. If she could enhance her control over souls to its peak for more than 1 minute, it could be extremely helpful. Thinking about this, Shiro decided to give it a try anyways. Tapping True Spirit Nature and Demigod Raiment, she pressed Fuse. Suddenly, she felt a sting of pain in her body. Gritting her teeth, she furrowed her brows while watching the progress increase. Since True Spirit Nature was something at the core of her being, having that taken away from her and fused into something else would definitely be painful. The skill Alchemist has no inherent backlash, but that doesn't mean it's the same for skills closely tied to her. Cold sweat dripped down Shiro's cheeks as the pain slowly subsided. Once the pain completely disappeared, she looked at the new skill that appeared on her interface. Soul Maiden. Similar to the power of Hades, your influence stretches to the soul so that none can escape your grasp. You have mastery over all your elements and can use it to help you capture your enemies, whether that be in a blazing hellfire or frozen landscape. If you have the attunement, you can use that to empower your spirit nature. Activation cost: 1% of divine energy. Duration: 1% of mana per second. Cooldown: not applicable. Backlash: the longer you stay in this form, the more you exhaust your body. After a certain point, you will not be able to activate this skill unless you have given your body enough time to recover. Reading this skill, Shiro sighed in relief and decided to give it a go. Since her True Spirit Nature was originally called Frigid Soul Keeper, she used the ice element first. Suddenly, Black mist appeared and wrapped around her body. A black dress with a long semi-transparent veil could be seen as the Soul Reaper butterflies appeared without her activating the skill. Seems like I passively spawn you guys in now, Shiro muttered with a small smile while looking at the butterflies. Dismissing her form, she watched as the butterflies disappeared in front of her. Turning her attention back to her status board, she wondered what else she could combine. Rebirth, Demigoddess Blessing, Demigoddess Domain, Divinity of Nanobots, March of the Goddess, Protection of the Goddess and Boon of the Demigoddess are all pretty similar except for the fact that they're designed for specific circumstances. Shiro thought to herself. However, there was a chance that it could become something similar to Pandora's Requiem, where it has 5 skills in one. Tapping her chin, she decided to give it a go. Plus, she remembers how she made the skill. With Skill Scholar, she'll be able to recreate it. Pressing all of the skills, Shiro felt something deep in her stir as the progress bar appeared. Demigod Skill, Rebirth plus Demigoddess Blessing plus Demigoddess Domain. Divinity of Nanobots plus March of the Goddess plus Protection of the Goddess plus Boom of the Demigoddess equals Demigoddess of War and Protection. Demigoddess of War and Protection. All allies cannot die. You take their damage instead. Dead allies, or those that you wish to help, will be revived. All allies will get the Blessing of Shiro. All allies will get the Blessing of War. While this skill is activated, your control over your divinity is increased to its current limit. You are able to designate 2 people as your champions who gain unique bonuses depending on their class. Cost: not applicable. Duration: 30 minutes. Any longer than 30 minutes, and it'll take 5% of divine energy per minute. Cooldown: 2 days. Backlash: none. Blessing of Shiro. You are blessed by the demigoddess Shiro. While her divinity is not protection, she wishes for you to survive through any means. You don't take damage while this blessing is activated. You cannot die while this blessing is activated. Plus 20% of demigoddess stats. Elemental spirits nearby are more cooperative with you, enhancing your attacks. Nanobots nearby will protect you. Blessing of War. All stats are doubled. Plus 20% of demigoddess stats. When you are in her army, you are able to launch an attack that's equal in power to 30% of demigoddess in stat. Half of your damage is converted to true damage. You gain 70% elemental resistance. Reading the skill, Shiro was silent. It was good, but the fact that it only lasts for 30 minutes is a little short for her liking. But overall, it was a pretty nice upgrade, especially the fact that she can designate 2 champions who gain bonuses unique to them. Checking through her stat page, she can see that it has cleared up a lot. You might want to deal with the Frozen Hell series. Nimue reminded as Shiro nodded her head. For the Frozen Hell series, she knew that her big sis told her that she should focus on this some more, but most will just drop dead with her nanotech. Thinking about it for a moment, she just decided to fuse everything together. Frozen Hell Arts, passive, a unique way of conjuring and utilizing the ice element. It gets stronger depending on your attunement to ice. It ignores all ice resistance. Blinking her eyes, Shiro didn't expect it to transform into a passive skill that ignores all ice resistance. Thinking about it, Shiro figured that it was probably similar to what her true spirit nature was like before. There were no spells in the description since it relies on her imagination. Ancient healing arts can stay as it is since Fire of Life and Grace are better separately. Same with Path of Ascendance. Pandora's Requiem can stay as it is. The 5 skills are helpful. I suppose I should clean up the other category. The other category of skills that was obtained through other means. Mini-map, inspection, disguise combust, and so on. However, most of them are too different to one another, so she can only keep it as it is. But compared to before, it wasn't as clustered. Name: Shiro. Race: Spirit Demigod. Title: Expert Monster. 13, 290/100. 000 humans killed. Fratricide. Creator of the Frozen Hell series. Incomplete. Creator of Een-Style Azura's Path. Seeker of Truths. Revolutionary. Celestial Empress EX. Benevolent Saint EX. Error code. Genocide. One of a kind. Virtue of Fortitude. Young Demigod. Goddess of Protection. Merciful Goddess. Young Goddess. 50% boost currently. Leader of Esharia. Tainted Shell. Realm Breaker. Godslayer. Level: 950. Class: Nanotech Demigoddess. Demigod. Divinity Rank 1. HP: 420, 000, 000, 000, /420, 000, 000, MP 1 365 000/1 365 000/000 STR 1,870,000,000 VIT 2,400,000,000 INT 7,800,000,000 AGI 2,080,000,000 DEX 1,770,000,000 DEF 2,050,000,000 Unassigned points 0 Attunements Cosmic Ice Tier 6 Apocalyptic Lightning Tier 6 Stygian Steel Tier 6 Astral Rift Tier 6 Augmented with Calamity's Will Void Star Tier 6 Celestial Star Tier 6 Aspect of Fire Tier 7 Boreal Wind Tier 6 Tectonic Quake Tier 6 Aspect of Water Tier 7 Aspect of Life Tier 7 Tier Nanotech Tier 7 Demigod Skills Error Extraction Nanotech Demigoddess Celestial Mirage Rift Strider EX Divine Court Appointment Shared Burden Nanotech Engineering Tier 6 Analysis Divine Gardens Divine Insight of God Nanotech Demigoddess Physique Element Control EX Soul Maiden Demigoddess of War and Protection Ancient Healing Arts Fire of Life Grace Path of Ascendance Phantom Path Celestial Path Pandora's Requiem Reaper Limit Break Origin War Saint Divine Enchantment Current Blessings Asteria Athena Aphrodite Ares Artemis Hades Hermes Poseidon Nyx Argus Gaia World-Class Magic Requiem of the Dead Grand Support Class Magic Requiem of the Demigoddess Origin Spells Time Flux Other Minimap Inspection Disguise Combust Heavenly Constellation Aurora Skill Alchemist Hollow Deceit Kitoma Divine Language Wrath of Stars Eyes of the Gorgon Miracle Sigil of Night Encroaching Darkness Skill Scholar Item Master Limit Focus Blessing of Chaos Soul Siphon Divine Runic Needles Devour Frozen Hell Arts Looking at her level and her stats, Shiro wondered how the average level 1000 looked like in this world. Plus, she also wondered what her stats would be like if she was a normal adventurer. Though if she was, she wouldn't have survived a lot of her encounters. Shaking her head, she checked up on the core that was still being upgraded thanks to error. Seeing the progress, she guessed that it'll probably be done tomorrow or at the latest, the day after tomorrow. Hearing a knock on her door, Shiro flexed her finger and opened it since it was Nantion. Have you finished? Shiro asked with a small smile. MN, I have. I've finished allocating Kyonua's spot in Asharia. Though at this point, it's better to call this entire thing Asharia since it's more like a country now and give new names for the cities. Nantion chuckled since the size was truly enormous now, especially after integrating all of Misu's zones. Perhaps, but Asharia was something I gifted to the spirits. I'll think of a new name for this country later. Shiro shrugged. You seem happy. Did something good happen? Nantion asked while walking to the changing room. Yup, I got a new skill thanks to error and managed to fuse a few skills together. The main thing was that I've pretty much removed the time limit of my true spirit nature. Instead, it's called Soul Maiden now, and I can pretty much have it up at all times. It takes 1% of my mana per second, but my regeneration is higher than the cost. Though there is the problem of exhausting my body the longer I stay like this. It's more of a physical problem rather than mana. Shiro shrugged, waving her fingers. Black mist wrapped around her body once more and butterflies appeared in the room. Seeing a few of them fly towards Nantion, Shiro snapped her finger. His soul is not for you to eat, Shiro said as the butterflies made their way back to her obediently. They look beautiful, but seeing as how you literally just mentioned something about them eating my soul, I suppose they're as dangerous as they are beautiful. Nantion chuckled. Yep, they take after their owner after all. Am I not beautiful and dangerous? Shiro smiled while flipping her hair back. With the moon behind her and the glowing Soul Reaper butterflies, it was quite the captivating scene. Narcissist. Nimue rolled her eyes as Shiro smirked. What? It's the truth. Talking to Nantion for a little longer, she also got changed and fell asleep. #####. Meanwhile, in the divine realm, the gods were shocked to discover that a mortal had actually killed a god. To them, only another god could find where their core was, and even then, destroying it is hard. The fact that a mortal had killed a god was simply ridiculous, but the system does not lie when it comes to things like this. In his own area, Ikari had an ugly look on his face since he clearly understood who could possibly do this. Touching his chest, he could still feel the sting of error as his wound hasn't healed up after all this time. Have you found a compatible body for our daughter yet? Arya asked, but Ikari shook his head. I'll keep looking, don't worry, I'll find it soon. He reassured while closing his eyes. Looking at Ikari's wound, Arya was silently contemplating about something. Waking up in the morning, Shiro checked up on Revel to see how he was. She needed him to be at full power for the raid. Arriving in his room, Shiro could see Revel in front of his computer with a grin on his face. He was tapping away furiously, and Shiro decided to glance into the servers to see what was happening. Seeing that he was taunting Kiona as usual, Shiro facepalmed. She didn't know what happened between the two of them, but it seemed like Revel was adamant on making sure Kiona never reaches third place or higher. Revel, Shiro called out, ignoring what she had just seen in the servers. Oh hey, didn't notice you. If you're wondering about injuries, then I'll probably be ready by tomorrow. There's just one last spot now, and it's being a bit annoying. I'm healing it while playing since I don't need to focus that hard to stop this person from reaching third. He smiled as Shiro nodded her head. Alright, the raid won't happen soon since I still need to arrange it with Cyrodiil. But since she is the Dragon Empress, does she have any control over you? I know you are a Leviathan, but you are rather dragon-like in some ways, so I was just curious. Shiro asked. She shouldn't have control over me. With how the system is, I'm guessing her control is strictly with dragons, wyverns, and anything belonging to that branch of family. To put it bluntly, I'm a very powerful fish, not a dragon or anything of the draconic species. Even when I was just a hydra, I counted as a mutated water serpent rather than a dragon. Revel shrugged. So you're just a powerful fish. Shiro raised an eyebrow as she didn't think someone as prideful as Revel would call himself a mere fish. Yup, if we do start a fight, I won't be controlled, so don't worry, Revel reassured. Amen. I have some trust in her, but it's not bad to have some contingency plans. I probably won't need it in the future, but right now it's good to keep my guard up. Shiro nodded. Good mindset. Speaking of which, are you able to tell me who she is? I want to gloat in her face. Revel asked with a grin as Shiro facepalmed. I'm pretty sure you can arrange that with one another without dragging me into this. Shiro sighed as she turned and left. They can handle this dispute with one another. ####. Wrestling a demon to the ground, a giant twisted its neck before sinking her mouth into its flesh. Ripping out a giant chunk, she summoned a sword and quickly cut it up into smaller chunks before storing it into her inventory. Spitting out some of the bone, she wiped away the blood on the corner of her lips. Stupid old man, this one doesn't sting anymore. How many more poisons do I have to gain resistance against? Madison shouted out into the sky as her physique shrunk down to her normal size. Madison LVL 800 Demon Queen. Just a few more now. You still need to gain resistance to curse and other forms of poison. Becoming an empress isn't easy, you know. You must have the proper physique, especially when it comes to Demon Empress. Macron replied as he was laying down on a tree that seemed to corrupt everything around it except for Macron. Naturally, that means acquiring a resistance to corruption and the chances of becoming fallen. He added as Madison nodded her head. She wanted to go back soon, but according to Macron, she wasn't ready. Why can't I go back? I'm already level 800 with a powerful physique. Isn't it enough? Madison asked, but Macron shook his head. You know what happened a while ago? Since we're in the demon realm, we didn't get this notification, but I received this news from one of my spies. There was an empress in the New Age that slew a god. Not demigod, not pseudo-god. They killed a god, which means she can pose a certain threat to me as well. I won't downplay her achievement even if that god has a low divinity. But do you know who can do this? Macron asked with a knowing smile. Shiro, yep. She is the only queen in your world that is classified as a demigod. But the worst part of everything is this. Why did she even get the chance to kill a god? Macron asked as his smile faded away. Gods and demigods shouldn't even appear before the second half, but here she managed to kill one. That can only mean one thing. Her actions of reaching demigod status has prepared the world ahead of time. Weaker gods and demigods can now materialize in the world sooner than expected. Of course, there are still backlashes, but it won't be as harsh as before. The world is almost ready after all, he explained as Madison stood in silence. You're only ready once you can run hands against a demigod, and you can only achieve that by becoming an empress, then attaining your own divinity, but that's in the future. For now, just focus on cultivating your body. I'm already making preparations for your ascension as empress. Why else do you think we're traveling towards the heart of the demon realm? Macron smiled as Madison nodded. Quickly eating her dinner, She left the area to look for her next prey to hunt. Watching Madison leave this area, Macron had a smile on his face since her growth during the last few months has been great. If he was being honest, she could probably become Empress now, but he wants her to be ready. He wanted to do everything he could to make sure she could stand up for herself. The world is too abnormal right now. Gods are making an appearance. Empresses are getting stronger, and the war in the divine realm is becoming more chaotic. Zeus is surprisingly holding on pretty well with the support he's been getting. Macron thought to himself with a frown. He did get an invitation to join the war, but he rejected for now. Rather than fight the war, he wanted to use this time to cultivate Madison's strength. ####. Slashing apart the mana beast in front of her, Lyrica conjured up a myriad of swords to help out with her party. Controlling the battlefield, she summoned a Tier 6 array that caused the mana within the monster's body to run rampant before transforming into swords that shredded their body. Lyrica LVL 740 Awakened Sword Sanctus. Looking at how exhausted everyone was, Lyrica flexed her fingers and stabbed her swords into the corpses of the monster, absorbing all of their essence until they were nothing but a dried-up husk. She distributed it amongst the party. Feeling rejuvenated once more, they thanked her before looking for somewhere to camp. "Have you found what you've been looking for?" Lyrica asked, but the dragon shook his head. "Nope. I figured that I should have found what can help me surpass level 980, but I've been stuck here for a while now." He sighed while transforming back to his human form. Scratching his hair, he looked up at the realm and frowned. "Maybe we'll have to go deeper. But this realm is unstable. It's risky to keep going." He cautioned. "How risky is it? And what are the chances of us surviving if we go?" Lyrica asked curiously while dismissing her sword. "How risky? Even with me, I'd say there's a 50% chance that I might get trapped and lose my way, slowly becoming a mana beast that lives here. For you lot, an optimistic guess would be 70% chance of being trapped. At worst, 90%, he said after observing all of them. "The risk is that high, huh?" Lyrica frowned. "Well, if it was when we first came here, even if I was to try looking at it optimistically, it would be 100% guaranteed death. The fact that you have a 30% chance of survival is pretty good already." The dragon explained as Lyrica nodded. "I don't mind taking that risk, but I'm not sure about others. For now, let's go look for an exit and discuss it there." Lyrica suggested. "Sure, let me spend some time in this form first." The human form is strangely effective at finding a comfortable resting position, he said while laying down on a broken pillar. After resting for a little while, they set off with Asher riding on Nitha's back and everyone else on the dragon. Flying through the beyond, Lyrica could see the ever-changing skies that looked like a swirl of mana. It would occasionally reflect what happened in the real world, but so far, she hasn't seen anything to do with Shiro just yet. Thinking back to Shiro, Lyrica looked down at her hands. She wanted to see if she could upgrade her class one more time. If Shiro could do this, it means there is a chance for others to do the same. She just needed to find this chance. Flying through the skies, the dragon narrowed his eyes before quickly diving down. Gesturing for Nitha to do the same, he had a serious expression on his face. "What happened?" Lyrica asked as she summoned a sword to get herself ready for combat. "Don't fight. This isn't something we can fight just yet. Let it pass," the dragon replied with a deep tone. Confused by what he was talking about, Lyrica suddenly felt an oppressive aura invade this realm. Feeling something large fly above them, she had cold sweat down her back as she knew whatever was above them was strong. Slowly tilting her head up, she saw the being that just arrived. Stretching as far as the eye could see, it was a giant serpent-like creature with a pair of muscular arms that was twice as thick as the dragon. Wings that could dwarf Asharius since she had last saw it. Cracks in space could be seen as the being threaded through the beyond for a moment. In this moment, Lyrica couldn't help but inspect the being. LVL 999 Royal Guard of the Beyond. Suddenly, all of them felt his gaze lock onto them as the dragon immediately stopped flying and bowed respectfully. "Don't check him out. Don't call out of him. Don't get his attention. Just let him pass and don't disturb him," the dragon warned as Lyrica nodded her head, staying silent for the next few minutes. The rupture in space finally closed and the presence disappeared. Sighing in relief, the dragon transformed into his human form and fell face first. "Goodness," he muttered. Strength left his body as he rested for a short minute. "Who was that?" Lyrica asked with a frown while she did the same. "Well, if you saw his tag, then you should know that he's one of the guards. Mother has told me before that each dimension naturally has its own deity and ruling party. They don't interfere with things normally, and just watch. For Earth, it'll be Gaia." the Shadow Realm, the Void, the Demon Realm, the Reaper Realm, and so on. They each have their own ruling party, and what we just saw was one of the guards for this realm. Now that we're traveling deeper, we naturally have to pay our respects when we see them. But just because they're guards doesn't mean they'll help us if we're attacked. The dragon explained as Lyrica nodded her head. I see. Wait, what exactly are we looking for in the center of this realm again? Lyrica asked as the dragon glanced back. Something that can help me surpass level 980 while helping you find a link to level up your class again. Since you said that you wanted to see if you can reach the status of a queen or empress, you need to understand what they are. They're rulers of a certain concept, much like gods, only weaker. If you want to find such a concept, the best place is naturally the center of the beyond. After all, there hasn't been someone that linked themselves with this concept just yet. I think it should be the perfect opportunity for you, the dragon said as Lyrica nodded her head. Looking up at the skies of this realm, she wondered what kind of concept she could gain control over, how it could help, and most of all, how it can help her protect everything else she has left. ####. Sitting in the command center, Shiro tapped the table with her finger. Right now, their overall combat power was strong, stronger than any queen out there right now. However, there was a problem. Rokarn is a demigod who was able to kill gods despite being surrounded. He is definitely much stronger than the Raven, even if the Raven is technically better as he is a god, and Rokarn is a demigod. But that's not all. Cyrodiil did explain that Rokarn will invade with his army. She had no idea what kind of army he has, but if it's something that could wipe out a majority of life on Earth much like what the start of the New Age did, then it's certainly nothing weak. We don't have enough information, Shiro complained while sighing heavily. Have you tried contacting Cyrodiil again? Nantion asked, bringing over some food since they've been working till late. Yes, I have, but she's not picking up. I even sent her some messages, but she hasn't looked at all. I'm pretty sure she's busy, so I can only wait. Shiro shrugged while accepting the food. Busy, huh? Well, things should calm down after a while. We're closing in on level 1000, which is apparently the limit, before the divinity comes in, so there will be calm for a while. No rush to level up for now, Nantion said while checking the strength of military personnel. Not everyone can level up crazily like Shiro and the others, so the average level in the army was only around 250 to 300. Specialist pilots were better at around 400 and closing in on 500. Needless to say, all of this was so that they can also fight if the mechs were to be destroyed. It was highly unlikely, but still in the realm of possibility. Well, if it's calm, then sure. I'll probably sleep the rest of my days away making juice or something. I did like the flute, but meh, too much work. At least with making juice, I can drink it afterwards. Shiro shrugged while leaning back on her heir. Perhaps you should make a personal garden with the best fruits that you've found. Nantion offered as Shiro was seriously considering the suggestion. Maybe. At least there will be more job openings then. I've also noticed that a lot more people have started to slack and literally do nothing now. I think I might have been too good to them. Shiro forced a smile while looking at the number of people in Asharia compared to the ones who have jobs. Of course, this was excluding the children since they can't work just yet. While Asharia is literally the best place for them in this world. Even without working, the basic things we give them are more than enough. What they work for is the luxury rather than the need of survival. True. Maybe I should adjust the rules a bit, Shiro muttered. Right now, the situation in Asharia was stable. Everyone had a house and had enough resources to feed their family. There was no inherent need to risk your lives in the dungeons since most only did so to sustain their family. Those that continue are mostly doing it for fun or to have that extra sense of safety with their levels. Conflict doesn't happen often in the streets, but when it does, the drones sort it out quickly. But as good as everything is, Shiro can also see the flaws. Indulging them too much is rather toxic for their growth. Perhaps you should set aside some time to adjust the rules in this place. They may not like it to begin with, but over time they'll understand. Or at least I hope so. Otherwise, once you disband Asharia after the New Age ends, they won't be able to handle things. Nimue said as Shiro nodded her head. I know. I'll hold a council meeting with the others later. Shiro nodded, creating a note for herself. ####. Treading through the blood-soaked sand. Cyrodiil panted heavily as she was heavily wounded. Leaning against a rock, she started to heal herself, starting from her missing eyes. The wounds on her body started to close up as her missing arm regenerated. Once everything was healed, she sighed out and looked at the battlefield. Seeing the dead dragons mixed in with the corpses of humanoid beings, Cyrodiil looked up at the moon. I didn't think that scouts would appear so early. Shiro must have interacted with the gate and awakened the army. I thought we could get the surprise attack, but it might be the other way around. Though it's about time we set off anyways. Cyrodiil muttered while looking at the phone that Shiro gave her. Seeing the messages, she was about to reply when she felt danger behind her. Before she could react, there was a split in the void and her body was cut in half vertically. Keeping her eyes on the being hidden in the sand, the two halves of her body burst into flames and transformed into a giant flaming dragon. Opening her mouth, Mana disappeared completely from the area as Cyrodiil released a breath attack. Asterisk, bang, disintegrating her assailant. Cyrodiil transformed back to normal and pushed her hair back so that it didn't obscure her view. Looking at the giant trench which was now being filled with the water from the ocean, Cyrodiil clicked her tongue. I'll need to warn Shiro about their ridiculous attack power. They might be weak as *T to kill, but we can't let our guard down. Cyrodiil muttered while leaving the area. Seeing that Cyrodiil had finally read her text, Shiro decided to call her. Waiting for a short moment, the line connected. Hello. Yo. Sorry I couldn't pick up the call. I was a bit busy. Cyrodiil chuckled as Shiro nodded her head. I had figured. What happened? It's not like you to ignore the texts. Shiro asked. Some of Rokarn's followers have come to Earth earlier than expected. Did you interact with the gate at all before? If you did, you might have started a countdown for it to open ahead of time. But it's fine. Start gathering everyone since we'll be preparing to fight it out soon. I'll give everyone a briefing once I heal myself. All right. Nodding her head, Shiro ended the call. I suppose we should wake everyone up. Nantion smiled as Shiro nodded. Amen. For them to keep Cyrodiil busy for this long, it's not going to be an easy fight. Shiro furrowed her brows as Nantion nodded. Perhaps we want to move with a small group of people to avoid casualties. Nantion suggested. Maybe. We'll have to see what happens. Shiro shrugged while clearing up the table, sending out an announcement to the core fighting force. Shiro made her way towards the conference room. Suddenly, a portal opened beside her as Estrella landed with a slight yawn. Sorry for waking you up, but there's been a slight change to the situation. Shiro apologized with a small smile. It's fine, Shiro. What's the situation about? Estrella asked curiously. Remember how I told you about our cooperation with Cyrodiil for the time being since there is an imminent danger? Well, it turns out that I might have accidentally forced this danger to come early thanks to my actions before. We're gathering to figure out a plan of action, Shiro said as Estrella paused for a moment before nodding her head. If you're uncomfortable with seeing Cyrodiil, I can give you a briefing later. Shiro offered, but Estrella shook her head. It's okay. I can keep my cool. If you say so, but if something's wrong, tell me. Okay, Shiro said as Estrella smiled and nodded her head. Making their way to the conference room, Shiro could see Sylvia yawning while propping her head up with her hand. Even though Chunyu seemed like he was relaxed as usual, Shiro could tell that he was wanting to sleep. Looking around, Shiro realized that everyone was in a similar situation. I suppose this is the first break they got in a while since we were clearing dungeons non-stop, Shiro thought with a forced smile. Sorry for waking all of you up so late, but as you read in the message, the time has come for us to prepare for the big raid. We'll be challenging a demigod and hopefully kill him before he lays waste to Earth. Even though I have killed a god a while back, this demigod is many times stronger than this god, so we have to be careful, Shiro cautioned as most of the people had arrived. Before we go, I will introduce you to a few new helpers, one of which is Revel that you're familiar with. He can act as vanguard for us in the battlefield, and he excels in clearing large armies. Next is Cyrodiil. Many of you know of her while some don't. She is the Dragon Empress who is one of the stronger people that I've seen in this world. Explaining both Revel and Cyrodiil's strengths to the party, Shiro noticed one slight problem. They were a super offensive party with practically zero defense without Madison. Both Revel and Cyrodiil could be described as nukers much like Shiro, Een and Addy as three examples. They excelled in completely thrashing the enemy with large-scale destruction spells that could shape the environment. In Revel's case, the more mana the enemy has, the stronger his storms become. For Cyrodiil, she was essentially someone who invested 80% of her stats into pure offense. Thinking about how one-sided their party composition was, Shiro's lips started to twitch. What's the highest level tank that we have? Shiro asked as Nantion scratched his cheek. 329. He replied as Shiro was silent. Any chance that they'll survive one attack from level 900s? I don't need to answer that now, do I? Nantion smiled helplessly as Shiro leaned back. Suddenly, she saw a figure flying towards them from the window and noticed it was Revel. Waving her finger, she let him in. Sorry, I had to finish that game quickly. So what's this meeting about? Revel asked as he sat down on his chair. Seeing his loose clothes and nonchalant expression, the party members wondered if they were hallucinating from a lack of sleep. Was this the level 900 plus Leviathan that Shiro cautioned them about? They thought, but didn't say anything. We're talking about our plans for the raid. I know that you can't cast any spells and most of your power comes from your control over storms, right? Are you able to give us examples of what you can do so that we can plan accordingly? Shiro asked as Revel nodded his head. Sure. Let's see. I can mimic most lightning-based attacks, such as chain lightning, but I have to absorb their mana first. Put it this way, what I can do depends on what my opponents can do. Sure, I have my physical prowess, and my storm is powerful even without mana. But if my opponent uses 0 mana and uses pure physical power, then I'm afraid there's not much I can do when it comes to using lightning. I'm the worst enemy for mages, but that's about it. Revel explained as Shiro nodded her head. It doesn't have to be enemies, does it? I can fuel your storm. No? Shiro asked as Revel nodded his head. Yes, you can. I've done that before with my allies, but there's a catch. You'll have to take some of the damage. Since I'm a storm Leviathan, I'm immune. But I can't say the same with you. Revel said as Shiro furrowed her brows. I can avoid taking damage with my mana, but the mana usage will shoot up dramatically. I haven't even done much testing with this skill, so I'm not sure how quickly it'll drain my mana. If it's something that could potentially one-shot me like the fire dragon's breath, then it might just empty my mana and health instantly. Shiro thought to herself while trying to estimate the mana usage. Do you want my honest opinion? Revel asked. Go for it. If you try to fuel my storm with your mana, you'll kill yourself in one hit. He said as Shiro paused. Come again. If you fuel my storm, you'll pretty much lose all of your health instantly. I've sensed your aura before, and I even doubted if my immunity could hold up before we fought. It was immunity, but with how much mana you had, it put doubts into my mind. Now let me ask you, how much lightning resistance do you have? Because if it's anything less than 90%, the damage is massively amplified. He shrugged. I think you might be able to get away with powering my storm using remote methods, but it's a bit risky. Hearing this, Shiro scratched her hair. Well, I suppose we can experiment before the raid. Shiro shrugged. Looking at the time, Shiro couldn't help but frown since Cyrodiil should have come here by now. Thinking about it, she decided to call Cyrodiil, and to her surprise, she picked up. I know I'm late, but give me a moment. I didn't think these bastards could find me again. Cyrodiil shouted out as Shiro could hear the sound of spells being fired in the background. Need any help? Shiro asked. Nope. You better clear some space in there for me. I'll teleport in a second. Hearing this, Shiro waved her finger and the table disappeared. Quickly moving back, everyone watched as a red portal appeared in the middle of the room, and Cyrodiil came charging through, slamming a monster onto the floor before closing the portal. There were holes through her body, but she didn't seem bothered as they were healing with each passing moment. Right then, I'm a bit late, but I believe I have a live test subject so that we know what we're up against in the raid. Cyrodiil smiled as she knocked out the monster in her hands, creating a cage that had a no-mana zone within it. Shiro placed the monster inside and set it aside for now. First of all, they tracked you down without you knowing. Are you sure they won't just come to my city? Shiro asked as she had a frown on her face. I don't worry about that. It was because of the scout they attached to me. I've already dealt with it, so it won't track us down anymore. Cyrodiil reassured. Looking around the room, she noticed Estrella. Oh my, a familiar face. She muttered, causing Estrella to narrow her eyes.